In mythology and in story, the singular hero is fundamental to our understanding of the world. It represents us as individuals going out into the world to forge our own path. What makes a hero is that they decide to go against society and therefore must act alone.
Say I have to take that journey and go down there and slay those dragons. Do I have to go alone?
If you have someone who can help you, that's fine too. But ultimately, the last trick has to be done by you.
A gathering of allies is important and necessary in the journey, but the story is essentially about the hero, and therefore focuses on his conflict and his revelation. In American mythology specifically, the hero sacrifices intimacy with others, friends or lovers, in order not to be distracted from their heroic duty. The singular hero is epic because they're lone wolves, they're pure, they're free of certain societal burdens and relationships. It is no wonder that our stories for kids often feature little boys who are basically little heroes, whose lives are suddenly thrown into an adventure. This adolescent journey always ends with them finding their way back home, of course, but the exciting bits take place when they are in the thick of the adventure, no parents in sight, tasked with saving a place, a person, or themselves. I grew up with so many of these stories, and the landscape for kids' movies has sort of changed. From my perspective, there's something that's still missing, though, from movies that are for kids and about kids. But let me first explain the norm. To me, story itself, within the mainstream especially, works its way around the cycle of the hero's journey. On various levels, it evolves to buck against what came before. It takes on a life and a path of its own. A story about Superman saving the world eventually becomes stale, but a story about Superman losing his powers is a new exploration of the character that dives deeper than before. Similarly, stories about singular heroes become stale. Stories featuring an ensemble that rely on one another feel more interesting and can explore more in the typical movie runtime. For much of the 80s and 90s, it was much more common to see boyhood portrayed in friendships. Often, this is a diverse group of characters, sometimes, most times, even with that one token girl. This group does what kids do best: make the adults angry. It's a story I was always obsessed with as a kid. For a long time, my favorite movie was Slappy and the Stinkers. Don't judge, it's a great movie. But so many of these truly shaped my childhood and my view of the world. I was jealous of these friendships, and the lack of girls in them made me wonder if girls could even have friendships like that, with each other. These stories are about camaraderie, learning to help each other and pull each other up, many times literally. It's about teaming up with your friends to take on the villains.
What'd you call them?
Ambassadors?
Yeah. Right, you guys, you gotta be ambassadors and go tell the others that we're on strike.
It's heroic rebellion against the ways of the world in group form.
You're in direct violation of controlled airspace.
What did he say? Probably something like you're under arrest.
It's a community rather than a singular hero. And that's incredibly important for kids, to see a group of friends work together as opposed to working alone. It can communicate to them that by working together, you don't have to be alone in making hard choices, and you don't have to sacrifice for the greater good. Instead, by working with your diverse community, you can find more creative solutions together. It tells us we're not perfect, and sometimes we need to lean on others to help us along. It also communicates that the system, the world as it is not perfect.
The ocean is this home. That's where he belongs. Yeah, you're right. We gotta free it.
And it can always use a rebellious group of kids to overthrow it and start something anew. And yet, these stories are overwhelmingly featuring boys. Something else that this story promotes is intimacy. In these stories, boys are encouraged to express their emotions to one another because bottling it up could actually get in the way of their adventure.
Yeah, but you know what? This one right here. This was my dream, my wish. And it didn't come true. So I'm taking it back. I'm taking them all back.
Ensembles promote group conflict, and that can feel more real and raw and meaningful than the conflict presented in stories with just the singular hero.
You don't know nothing about jail. Now thanks for what you've done, but you get out of here.
Stories featuring young girls as the heroines are in abundance nowadays. For the most part, audiences demand it. They want their kids to see strong girls as much as we've seen strong boys. But in stories depicting young girls as the lone heroine, there have been some wonderful examples of heroines that are actually very unique. These stories about what I call lost girls are those featuring strong-willed, rebellious young girls who are either literally lost or are trying to find family in a world that is unfair to them. While the girl may have friends or allies, she is a singular hero, one that must make important decisions for her own story. The biggest difference between lost girls' stories and stories featuring young boys as a singular hero is that the lost girls are often dealing with more adult themes at earlier ages, things such as death.
And where is his glasses? He can't see without his glasses.
Adolescent sexuality.
What are you ducking behind the bushes for? You ain't got nothing to hide.
And her adventure through the story we witness takes her out of the innocence of girlhood. Even in stories where girls get to go on bigger adventures, they're dealing with some pretty heavy stuff compared to their male counterparts. The visual of women or girls gathering together has always been threatening to androcentric systems. In coming-of-age stories, girls are often at odds with one another. If they have female friends, those friendships are almost always tested.
So you know what? Here is your friendship charm. I'm taking it off and it's going in the dirt.
Don't do that, okay? Just...
There's conflict over a boy, over a clique, over not being there when the other needs them. And friendships between girls are barely ever portrayed in groups. It's far more common to see older women in these group friendships, probably because women writing these stories want to see themselves in them. And a lot of women see group friendships as important. Women have always gathered together, meeting in circles for book clubs, knitting, quilting, watching their kids play in the park. It's a part of the ritual of womanhood to belong to a group of women. At least, that's how it's depicted in our stories. But for young girls, friendships with other girls are filled with conflict. Girlhood ritual can and should be portrayed. Girls not against each other, but working together to grow into or fight against adulthood. We see this better portrayed in serial stories, which show development over time, or in stories featuring magic girls, where the girls are a part of a squad destined to be together in their youth. Girls don't get to be goonies. They get to be the token girl in the Goonies, you know, the hot one or the nerd one. They can even be one of the boys if they're cool enough. They don't get to be one of the lost boys, but they can be Wendy if they're good, pure, or motherly enough. And these are the messages that I and a lot of other women grew up with. Adventure is for the rare girl, the singular heroine, or the ones that were just good enough to fit in with the boys, the girls that are not like other girls. Whereas boys were taught the importance of friendship, the importance of sticking together and helping each other overcome external threats for the sake of the group, of the team, of the squad. Girls can be a part of a team too, and they can all be heroines in a group. They can and should be lost girls together.